Behind a locked door at Buckingham Palace, King Charles III placed his signature beneath a paragraph that transformed the British monarchy with the cold finality of an iron gate shutting in the dark. This was not a whispered rumor or a tabloid leak. It was the formal signing of the Crown Continuity Instrument. The document did not merely praise the future importance of the Princess of Wales, but officially designated Catherine as the woman who would carry the crown forward. Crucially, the King's signature ordered the formal removal of Meghan Markle from the monarchy's long-term governing structure and ceremonial future. For Harry, the words landed like a legal sentence. For Meghan, they felt like a permanent decree of exile. When Charles finally lowered the pen, no one in the room celebrated. They understood that the royal future of one couple had been secured by systematically ending the prospects of another. Charles kept his hand beside the pen as a suffocating silence settled over the private library. His private secretary watched the ink dry while the constitutional advisor waited for the monarch to look up. This was a confidential framework defining how authority, household control, and ceremonial influence would pass into the next reign. It was not an abdication, but its effect was just as seismic, as it signaled the end of the Sussexes' royal era. The monarch read Meghan's name one last time and pressed his thumb against the heavy vellum paper. He asked his advisors if there was truly no other path, though he already knew the constitutional answer. The delay would only leave the monarchy divided between two competing centers of influence, a risk the institution could no longer afford. William needed the certainty of a clear path, and Catherine needed the freedom to prepare for a heavy destiny. The phrase, "no reconciliation possible," was embedded in the text to stop future appeals before they could even begin. It was designed to tell Harry that time would not undo this decision, and to inform Meghan that public pressure would not reopen doors that were now legally locked. The document was a cold instrument of statecraft meant to survive the shifting moods of family sentiment and the cycles of media outrage. Prince William received the news before the wider household, and his reaction was a study in cold, controlled discipline. He did not celebrate the victory or question his father's resolve. He only gave a short, sharp nod of acknowledgement. For the future king, this was never about an invitation to a party. It was about whether the monarchy could survive constant emotional risk and family pain spilling into the business of the state. Meghan Markle, once welcomed into the very heart of the House of Windsor, was now formally barred from all official events. This meant no balcony appearances, no state banquets, and no family services where the monarchy presents itself as a united front. She understood instantly that the palace had not just blocked her from the rooms, it had declared that those rooms would continue to exist without her presence. The ban was not born in a single morning of frustration, but from a hidden rupture that had been festering since the Windsor Unity reception. That evening, intended to show a facade of peace, became the moment the king realized. Affection could no longer overrule the crown. Behind the scenes, a disagreement over Catherine's rising authority became a direct challenge to the very order of succession Charles was sworn to protect. During that private reception, Meghan reportedly challenged a senior courtier over her seating and the restriction of her press access. She heard control where the palace intended protocol, and she saw a warning where they intended order. When she connected Catherine's name to these decisions, the atmosphere in the room changed instantly. William's restraint did not vanish loudly, it sharpened into a defensive wall around his wife. The prince told Meghan that Catherine had not arranged the seating and would not be pulled into a dispute created by the Sussexes' grievances. Meghan looked back with wounded defiance, while Harry stood between them, caught in the exact psychological trap he had feared most. One brother demanded restraint for the sake of the institution, while the wife demanded defense for the sake of her dignity. Charles watched the silence spread across the room and understood the meaning before anyone said it aloud. A family invitation had turned into a threat to the royal order, proving that any future gathering would become a battlefield. Later, a palace aide recorded that the king described the evening as a warning dressed as a reception. He realized that the Sussex problem was no longer a personal matter. It was a constitutional one. Within 48 hours of that night, constitutional advisors began drafting the instrument that would remove Meghan from the monarchy's future. Charles did not rage when the final recommendation reached his desk. He simply removed his glasses and waited for the silence to speak. He signed the document after a long pause that seemed to divide his history as a father from his duty as a sovereign. Harry felt personally cornered the moment he realized the palace had separated him from Meghan in its long-term strategic thinking. His wife had not only been refused a seat, she had been placed outside the royal circle entirely. The message pressed on his own name and his place as the king's son. He asked his father's aide if Charles had truly approved the wording, and the soft yes struck harder than a shout. The phrase "no reconciliation possible" turned a family dispute into a permanent verdict for the public record. Reconciliation usually implies the repairing of a broken bond. But here the palace used the word to declare that the attempt at repair had failed. Meghan felt erased by the wording, while Harry felt a sense of finality that was more frightening than the anger he had carried for years. Camilla watched the fallout with a practiced, careful silence, knowing that a single wrong sentence could be weaponized by either side. Having survived years of public judgment herself, the Queen Consort knew that silence was often the most powerful form of protection. She watched Charles carry the weight of the decision alone, feeling the loneliness of a man who had to choose his crown over his child. Catherine received the private briefing quietly, but she did not react with a sense of triumph. She felt the sadness of a family line that was being surgically severed because the wounds were too deep to heal. She understood that the ban might stabilize the monarchy, but she also knew it would deepen Harry's isolation. For Catherine, the crown was a duty that demanded the sacrifice of her own peace. The first leak of this document contained only 11 words, but they were enough to shake the palace to its foundations. The future queen shall assume undivided authority after the transition, the headline read. Within minutes, royal correspondents were calling every contact, and the story escaped the palace's control. Camilla heard the news on a television segment and realized her private removal was becoming public history. A national broadcaster received a photograph of one paragraph showing the royal seal and Charles's handwritten initials. Buckingham Palace immediately entered crisis mode, drafting responses that ranged from denial to a cold admission of the document's existence. The transition planning, once a private process, had become a public battle over who would control the future of the House of Windsor. Catherine was helping Prince Louis with his schoolwork when her phone began to vibrate with the news of the leak. She told William that she would not allow her elevation to be presented as a victory over another woman's loss. William agreed, but he warned her that the palace could no longer control how the public divided its sympathy. The story had become too simple for the country to ignore one woman in, one woman out. Charles refused to retreat, even as the media storm grew louder outside the palace gates. He rejected a proposal to revoke the decree, stating that any reversal would make the future crown appear negotiable to every wounded faction. He wanted the world to know that the line had been drawn and that the decision was permanent. The era of uncertainty was over. The era of boundaries had begun. In a final attempt to salvage dignity, Catherine requested a private meeting with Camilla without any men or lawyers present. The two women met in the garden room at Clarence House, sitting beside a tray of untouched tea. For several seconds, neither spoke. One had been named the future of the monarchy, while the other had been told her influence would die with the current reign. Catherine's first sentence was not an accusation. "I did not come here to take anything from you." She wanted Camilla to know that her future queenship would not be built on the public humiliation of the woman Charles loved. She promised to respect the work Camilla had done, provided the boundaries of the new decree were honored. It was a negotiation of respect in the shadow of a loss of power. Camilla finally admitted that her anger was not just about the loss of authority, but about the fear of being reduced to scandal once again. She had believed that future influence would prove she had finally been accepted by the institution. Catherine listened without judgment, realizing that the document represented different things to different generations. The meeting ended with a handwritten statement of acceptance from Camilla. By the next sunrise, the secret document belonged to the world's breakfast tables and television studios. Supporters of the Sussexes saw the move as an act of cruelty, while traditionalists saw it as a long overdue act of institutional defense. One image outside the palace captured the mood: two women holding portraits of two different queens, standing silently beside each other in the London rain. The London Chronicle published a full-width image of Charles's pen with the headline, "The King Chooses the Future." The broadcaster read a confirmed line from the framework: "The next reign must begin with unity of command and clarity of duty." The message was clear to everyone watching. The monarchy was no longer a family business. It was a fortress being reinforced for the next generation. William and Catherine stood together as the official statement was released, the prince taking his wife's hand as her name was formally linked to the crown's next chapter. The future queen struggled to contain her emotion, knowing that her rise was now tied to the public exclusion of her brother-in-law's wife. The responsibility was now undivided, and the weight of it was visible in her quiet gaze. Harry eventually folded the palace's formal communication and placed it in a desk drawer. He did not tear the paper or throw it aside. He kept it because even the pain from his family still belonged to his story. The act of keeping the letter was the final emotional truth of the day. He understood that his wife's chapter inside the royal events was over, and his own place had changed forever. The Crown Continuity Instrument remains permanently in force, a silent sentinel in the royal archives. It ensures that when William becomes king, there will be no competing courts or rival advisors questioning Catherine's authority. The document is the period at the end of a long volcanic sentence in the history of the Windsors. It is the price of stability in an age of constant exposure. Charles carried the sorrow of the signature as both a father and a king, realizing that some doors must be closed to keep the house from falling. He chose succession over sentiment and continuity over the hope of a reconciliation that had proved impossible. He remained beside the sealed document in his library, knowing that the crown had survived because he had finally chosen a clear destination. The silence behind the palace doors is now the silence of an organization that has made its final decision. There is no next chapter for Meghan within the official royal fold, and there is no more room for negotiation for Prince Andrew. The monarchy has moved into a colder, more disciplined era, where the rules are written in ink that cannot be erased by interviews or memoirs. As the sun sets over Buckingham Palace, the lights are on, but the family is different than it was a decade ago. One era has established the limits of another, and the women who fought for the soul of the institution have found their places on either side of the gate. Catherine walks forward with the burden of the future, while Meghan remains in the quiet of a life lived outside the circle. In a town that demands everything from its icons, the monarchy managed to save its structure at the cost of its heart. The final mark is hit, the pen is down, and the king is walking into the twilight of his reign. He is finally finished with the uncertainty, and the silence is his only witness. The House of Windsor continues steady and stone-faced as it always has, and as it always will. Thank you for joining us as we uncovered the truth behind the secret document that redefined the British throne. The story of the crown is a journey of light, shadow, and the incredible resilience of a 1,000-year-old institution. We will see you in the next one as we continue to pull back the curtain on the real hearts behind the gold of the world's most famous family. The credits have rolled on this chapter of the Sussex-Wales rift, but the echo of the closing door will be heard for decades. Charles chose the boundary, William will guard it, and Catherine will live with the responsibility of it. The monarchy survived by closing a door it once hoped would remain open, proving that in the end, the crown always comes first. Goodbye for now, and keep your eyes on the horizon. The story of Harry and Meghan has reached its ceremonial boundary, a place where the private pain of a son meets the public duty of a king. There are no more lines to be written in this specific decree, only the long view of a history that moves on without apology. The dangerous smile of the rebel has been replaced by the quiet resolve of the future queen. And that is the only ending possible. If this look into the cold reality of the royal ban moved you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of the icons who shape our world. We are building a community that honors the real struggles and the real victories of those who live in the spotlight. The royal family is still there, and the silence is finally beautiful. The end.